Hi everyone, Agnes here. I have got Dr. Brooke with me today, and she is in California. Hello, Dr. Brooke.
Hello, how are you?
Good. And we said that we were going to talk about a few things that a lot of people are going through, which is abandonment, brokenheartedness, and the issues that we have in relationships. And I know you deal with a lot of this in your practice, and you said you would come on and basically go through what sorts of things you do to give people relief from those things.
Yes, I'd be happy to help and be here with you guys.
Great. So, okay, I come to you. I've had a breakup. I'm devastated. I'm feeling massive rejection, feeling very abandoned, having trouble sleeping and eating, which does tend to happen a lot under those conditions.
Yeah.
What would you do with me if that was the case?
I'd start with a personal detail history. So I'd go over the past. So if we've had a reoccurring problem in this area, if you're constantly having either the rejection or the abandonment or the trauma, or if you're constantly, we talk about everyone as you pushed out. And so there's that, but there's also patterns. So that is in conjunction to patterns. So I would first find out, where did this start, and go deep dive into the childhood, right? So normally the mother or father left if we constantly choose a partner that's emotionally unavailable, and trying to fix and heal that wound that void that hasn't been filled. And so there becomes after like this deep depression, because it's not the first trauma. It's not the trauma that you're dealing with that's actually the problem. It's the first trauma. And then you have another one. And so it activates every other time there was a rejection wound or a trauma around abandonment, or, not being chosen. Maybe there was another sibling that was chosen more, you're a middle child or last born, or whatever the case is. There's always different situations. So I would first do a whole history on you, and I'd find out, where's the root cause? And we'd go from there, and I'd look at different modalities. Things like breakups, the first thing I like to do is a deep dive into an inner child healing and use hypnotherapy for that. There's about 18 modalities I pull from, but for the trauma and the broken hearts, hypnotherapy seems to be really effective, really effective.
Okay. So if people do, you and I have talked a lot about inner child work, that it's absolutely crucial. If people go back and do the inner child work, is it then that relationships would be a lot less triggering and a lot easier mentally and emotionally for that person?
Yeah, you're no longer grasping to fill a void, because there's no voids to fill. So you're not trying to take care of that little child anymore, or having somebody else take care of you. You're taking care of that inner child. You're doing the work so that you're responsible for what happens around you. And it is full accountability. It's getting out of the state of being a victim, right? Yeah. Because there's so much. I think one of the biggest pandemics in the world was not the pandemic, was a victim mentality, and not taking ownership for where we are, what we're doing collectively. What did we say? We all said we wanted a break for years, and we got a break. So yeah, just being and honoring self first, I think, would be the first thing, and looking and doing a deep dive. I do deep therapy. So I care about transformation more than I care about what modality I use. I want to make sure that I'm healed and set free and on a road to never be stuck, I always say that when we have these wounds, we actually give handcuffs to our partners, and then we're handcuffed to them. And it's bondage. You feel like you're in bondage because it's a constant cycle over and over again. Yeah,
that's so true. And it becomes where each time it happens, it feels like, it feels worse, because you think, how many times do I have to go through this? Now it's happening again. I've got a different partner. I've got a different dynamic with this person. And then you end up in the same patterns because you keep reinfecting yourself with the original offense or the things that happen. So yeah, it's okay. Let me ask you, is this something that people can diminish or basically get rid of for good, do you think?
Absolutely. I think the work that you do too. You do intense coaching. We've had a lot of extensive conversations, and I I would say your coaching is more clinical because you do know so many parts integration, you know, so many things on why people continue to loop and stay in their cycles. And absolutely, if you deal with that core wound, why I like mental and emotional release, which is called MER, or why I like EMDR, or why I like hypnotherapy, is because they go so deep in the unconscious that that first state is removed. So we can have the client or the patient disassociate from the actual wound, and they're no longer associated to the abandonment from mom, or the abuse from dad, or the emotional unavailability from the dad leaving or working all the time, or being, you know, a lot of parents are addicts, or one parent's an addict. And then I see a lot of patients that their partners are all addicts or emotionally unavailable, or women are very much in their masculine because they're trying to overcompensate and would rather not be vulnerable, you know, and that usually is a very telling sign that the father was not available for them. So they're overcompensating. But yeah, I think we can heal anything. It's a choice. It's a choice to do the work, to stay committed to yourself, to choose to love yourself first. I think we've had extensive conversations about self-love, and I preach on self-love as self-mastery. It's the only thing. It's really when you have that, you have everything, and that bleeds out of you, you know. You know, joy is different than I think happiness. So I think having that inner state of knowing that you're responsible for your happiness, you're responsible for your joy, you're responsible to show up. Yeah. So I don't think anyone has to stay with anything ever. Yeah, that's no way.
That's so good, because I think, you know, especially people that have done Neville for a long time, or Abraham Hicks, and then they end up feeling really good when they're single, and then they get back into a relationship and go, great, I've done all this work, and then more stuff comes up to be healed. Stuff comes up more, let's say, another layer of the onion when you get back into a relationship to see how well you did when you were single. But it's not that you didn't do a good job. It just means that there's more stuff to clear. And it's not a bad thing. Relationships will often bring that up again and again and again, but it gets less. I mean, I find it just gets less.
It does. And how do you know how much work you've done until you have a mirror, right? Doing all this work being single, and you're doing your workouts, and you're doing all of your self-love affirmations, and you're doing your meditation or your breath work or whatever modalities or whatever self-care routine, yoga, you know, there people are doing all kinds of things. And then all of a sudden you're in a relationship and you're dating somebody and they don't text you back. I get this a lot. And all of a sudden, all those things that you're like, I'm so good, are starting to be triggered again, because that abandonment still, and it's going to test you. I tell patients and clients, you're going to be tested. Have you really done the inner work? And I'll know right away. They come in or they call me or we're on a call. I always know very quickly because of the angst of like, this is how, and them, I was like, okay, well, I can just kind of, and I think you can too, right? In coaching, you can kind of see if they've been doing that work, because if they've have a high level of self-love or prioritizing self, that it doesn't affect you as much, because you're not associating whatever the other person's doing to a rejection for you. And rejection's a big one too. We said abandonment and we said brokenheartedness, but the rejection wound is deep. I find that to be a loop that EMDR really helps with, because it disassociates completely from the trauma. So they can now see clearly their partners. Yeah. You know, we'll do a patch over one eye or a patch over the other eye, the right and left part of the brain, the male and masculine and feminine side of the brain, so the male side and the feminine side. And usually it's shocking how, if I cover a woman's eye who had father wounds, she can see that the partner's really unhealthy. But if I cover the right eye and she has father wounds, she's like, but I still love him. That in one person, it's like you have this, and it's so telling, because that's how much we can disassociate, because the trauma is so deep that we blind ourselves.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And they are always like, I can't believe I just said that. Yeah, because they're like, did I just say? I'm like, yeah, you said that. Because I'll ask the same question. You came in, I put the patch on here, put the patch on here, and ask a deep dive of questions, and not really let you know I'm asking questions, because it would be conversational, and take notes and let you know, here's what you said when I asked the question this time, and here's what you said. And they're always, that alone, it's starting to unlock. They see it and they're like, oh, this isn't me. Yeah. So it's full accountability, full ownership to say, okay, this isn't the other party. This is me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's responsible. You know, everywhere you are, everywhere you go, there you are. So,
Yes.
you know, and I do think, you know, do the cleanup before you're in the relationship, but expect there to be some stuff that comes up because there's fears. And once you've had a terrible breakup or a lot of rejection, or you've called that person back in and your partner, you do a lot of LOA, bringing your partner back, and then they come back and you start to get triggered again. I'm like, well, the self-love isn't high enough yet, because if it was, whether they come or go, or you date once a week, or it's a slower flow because it's actually healthy this time and not a trauma bond, you know, it's going to look different than the first time when it was rush.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think, yeah, doing the work, the deep dive is so important.
Can you explain a little bit more about EMDR? Because I know people know the letters, but they don't actually know what it means.
Yeah. Eye movement desensitization.
Yeah.
So it just basically and it reprocesses the brain. So reprocessing, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing. And what it does is, because the traumas are stored in different parts of the mind and different parts of the brain. Again, we do a personal detailed history, and I would disassociate the client from right eye to left eye and ask different traumas dependent on what they are, and have the eye move. So if you came in and we were talking about a father wound, I'd probably work with your left side and see where that started, and have you look here, have you look here, have you look here, have you look here. As I'm asking different questions, what happens is you start to disassociate so you can see clearer, and that trauma can come up, but it doesn't feel like a trauma when there's a disconnect. So you can actually see yourself better. And once you go into that work, it does start to unlock those wounds. And then we can go into those wounds. But if they're not unlocked and there's this block, because a lot of people, I always tell people, you have to guard your heart, but not block your heart in order to heal. Because we're so scared, and we have this thing, and, you know, people get tense and tied up here, and we all say it from the computer, but a lot of it is because we've been hurt and we want to pull in and guard our heart and cover our heart. I was responsible for that for a long time. I was so tense in my shoulders and things, and it was just fear. As I've done the work, you can sit back and you can see it in your posture. It's not even cognitive. It's just something you do once you know, oh, okay, wow, I don't need to protect my heart anymore. I can guard it. I'm okay. And self-soothe, right? So that's a little bit, it just disassociates the trauma at a very deep level, and where it's stored.
And do you do different lengths of sessions depending on someone's trauma, or how do you work out how long of like, do they do one a week for 2 months, or how do you work out what to do?
Depends on what it is. I've worked with a lot of addicts in the last few months, and their loops are very deep because they're addicted to therapy, and they alter their addictions. So they sometimes there's a persona that we create as humans, and they like to stay stuck in an area, not just addicts, but humans, as anyone who wants to, they think you can come in and say, I want to be set free and I want all these things, and saying something and actually meaning it I find it very rare that they're the same. You know, and that's why hypnotherapy is so good, because it actually helps you get smokers. For example, I want to quit smoking, but I keep smoking. And so the unconscious is running the racket and running the story. So it varies. Some people are like, God, this is everything I needed, and they have such breakthrough in one session. Some clients see me for a year, and then they see me once a month after that weekly session. It just depends on the depth of the trauma. If there's emotional abuse, if there's physical abuse, if there's any type of rape or molestation, those are deeper dives, and they do take more time. A lot of it we've blocked as adults, you know, because it's so deep and so painful to go into those childhood memories. So we block them, and rightfully so. I understand that. There's no judgment to anybody who does. You know, it's easy to compartmentalize, store, but that comes up in a relationship, especially when intimacy is involved and emotional, you know, availability is involved. You start to, those things get uncovered really quickly. They come to surface, I guess. They start to bubble up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if someone works with these modalities for a certain amount of time, and then they re-enter either that relationship with a specific person, or they move on to a new relationship, have they been able to see changes in their reactions and their responses to when, say, certain triggers would happen, and it would send them off into all sorts of childhood stuff? Is there a different response for those sorts of things?
Yeah, I think I'd be out of business if there wasn't, you know. If I didn't
Yeah.
have-
Yeah.
I'm tough sometimes because I make self-awareness the most important thing in my practice. You know, we don't get to constantly blame others. If there's abuse, that's a little bit different. But then if you go back to that abuse partner, we're going to look at that because you're choosing, you know, there's no, and if the excuses keep coming, I'll actually not see the client anymore if it happens over 3 times, because it's a boundary where I want transformation and that's my results. And that's because I've called in and choose people who are ready to do the work. But I usually have done really good in my own practice because of what I hold in my space of only send me people who are ready to go that do that deep dive and to let go of the persona. We have a persona, there's a personality, and there's a persona, and the persona, we get secondary gain from that, which if your watchers or viewers don't know what that is, we're so attached to, for example, that having some children don't really have allergies, but they realize when they have allergies that mom gives them extra attention. And she's like, oh my goodness, we got to make sure he, you know, so Neil's okay. If Neil's okay, and so he realized that, okay, if I have an allergy attack or an asthma attack, mom's going to give me attention. So we do that with our partners as an adult. If I freak out or something's wrong with me, I'm going to get the attention I needed as a child. Right. So that's secondary gain. The secondary gain is if I'm hurt, I'm getting attention. Yeah. And so seeing that and saying, are you ready to let go of any secondary gain? Are you ready to let go of your persona? Are you ready to step into your true authentic self and be self-aware that you're the co-creator, 1, but 2, you're responsible and that's hard when people have been like, well, I've been raped, I've been this, I've been that. When once they're ready, we can do a deep dive. Well, why were you here? And why were you this? And why were you that? And that's not always like that. Sometimes people are just victims of that. And you know, the deep dive we've had to do in that area. And sometimes women go back to abusive partners over and over, and then they'll come to me and say, well, he raped me. And it's, well, you went back to him 7 times. So that's hard. That's a hard mirror. And I know I hold that sometimes. So it's really, people are ready, you know, to do the work. And that's when we'll go deeper. But I gauge and I see, and I try to be really sensitive, but that secondary gain gets us all, gets itself included, you know, is this going to give this? And I think if any of us were really looked in the mirror and said, am I getting any type of attention or validation or anything from this? The answer is usually, unless we have done the work, yes.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because it's like the immense relief you can get from your stuff is profound.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fulfilling, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's very fulfilling to see the messages and the letters and just the kind words, because people feel, and I always tell them, like, you did the work. I just got to help you hold a good mirror, you know, and I do the work and you become a clearer conduit, a clearer mirror for your clients. They actually do get more. We're responsible. You, as the level of coach you are, and the hundreds and thousands of people you see on your page, and me as someone who has a practice, you know, on Sunset, other people I walk in, you know, a lot of entertainment. If I don't do the work, 1, they feel that, 2, they see it, and 3, it mirrors in my practice.
Yes.
So if I'm not doing my self-love practices or my breath work or all my meditation, it's shocking. Even if I miss a few days, shocking how my clients, not shocking, but it's funny how they all of a sudden, whoa. Yeah. It's very telling to see, and it's powerful. It's very empowering to know, wow, we all do we're all kind of a fractal of each other's consciousness, you know?
Yeah. And I know you're really big on Hooponopono too. Like that's a big part of mine and your conversations has been the depth of clearing that alone does. And I know you've been on multiple Hooponopono retreats and things, and that's part of what you do for you. But do you use that with people as well? Do you bring that in?
I wrote a modality in hypnotherapy. I had gotten licensed through my own practice in order to write scripts around that. And then because I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, so I wrote that into one of my inner child healings, and it's been profound. We do a conversation. And so I do use it probably more than anything else, just in the beginning, to start to really heal and bring up that, because those 4 statements on the unconscious disarm the unconscious. So it completely disarms the inner child. And on the stage, when you put people on the stage, you're putting yourself on the stage for my modality. So it's very different, because you're disassociating again from everyone else, not letting everyone else be responsible. You're taking ownership, and now you're responsible. So I try to always bring the focus to self, because then you realize that if it's good, it's you, and if it's bad, it's you, but that you can change it either way.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really important, because empowering people, not allowing them to think that they're the victim to what's going on around them, because they're not.
No,
we're not. You know, that's magnetism, that's LOA, that's everyone says we're constantly creating and manifesting whether we want to or not. In our thoughts, in our actions, in our words, in our energy.
Yeah.
You know, fear, you'll be shocked you get in an accident, but we're even going to say to fear all day. It has to attract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful stuff, isn't it? Like, you've got such a great bag of professional tools. You know, it's not just therapy, or it's not just hypnotherapy. You've got a lot of the stuff that the viewers on this channel are very well versed in. It's like you have got it all. You can bring it all in and use different bits of it to really, in a way, you're helping people to spiritually mature from the inner child ruling the roost, and the inner child being the one that's out the front in the relationship. As the relationship progresses and more of your stuff shows up, it's like a clearing, so that the adult gets up and is on deck and ruling the roost, and the adult is participating in the relationship more than the inner child.
Yeah, I think it's so important to take responsibility. And that's not always easy, you know, when I've in past knowing, me. But it's also having grace, so much grace with yourself. Like I always say, like, there's no shame once clients have these epiphanies of like, oh my gosh, I created this. Wow. Like, but there's no shame in that. That's okay. You know, now that you know you did it, let's have grace. Boomer wants to say hi, apparently. Hi. I know. Thank you. He brought you a hamster toy, I guess. He just wants to say hi. Like, here for all your followers.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, he loves you. He knows your voice, and he literally brought you a big hamster. I know, she sees you, Boomer.
Oh, beautiful.
He loves you. Babies love you. You're their favorite.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Jaymee, that's so great. And you know what? I think there's so many people that, you know, they go, I've tried this and I've tried that, and I've tried affirmations, and I've tried meditation, and I've tried SP this, and I've tried, you know, the 2-cup method, or whatever bright shiny object is being, you know, waved around on YouTube at any given point. And then it's like, okay, some stuff really does get to the base root of what you need to work on, and some stuff is just really a little bit of a waste of time, let's say. But it's working out which is the stuff that is going to really heal, and then get to the point where you can have a relationship, and it's not like this all the time. It's actually, it levels out, and you can have such great moments in a relationship with someone, and it is pretty much drama free most of the time. And it's so possible, but you must do the work on yourself. And this is why you know, you and I were talking about doing this probably for the last 6 months, but there's been, you know, you've had so many changes around moving where you live and moving your office and all this stuff. So today was the day, and it's so, I get so inspired when I hear things that really work for people, and things that people really can get relief from. And I know you do, because we talked about this, you do sessions not just in person. You do see people, obviously, where you are in Los Angeles, but you do sessions on Zoom, and you do them with people all around the world. And I will put your details down below for those that want to contact you directly because I'm very fond of the work you do, and I'm really fond of you. And you and I have had many, many, many conversations over the last, maybe 4 years now, I would say.
Gosh, it's been 5.
Before-
I was looking. Yeah, it's been 5 years this
5
November.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what a gift you are to so many people. And if you have your viewers, and I think clients have reached out, and we've gotten to do some deep dive, on some mental and emotional release, trapped emotions. Some people don't realize that there's guilt or fear or trauma stored in the body, and then that is acting out as a pain or anxiety or depression. And so releasing those trapped emotions, that's mental and emotional release. It is a form of hypnotherapy. It's a deep dive. It goes, there's on hypnosis, there's levels, and that's a deep dive, but it really does unlock and reset all the way back to childhood. I mean, I ask, when did this first happen? They're under, so it's in the womb before, and they afterwards, it's always very telling because you literally feel that unhooking. And seeing them become free of self, and the colors shift on their face, the lightness of heart, the relief. There's a huge, and it's so fulfilling to see, like, oh gosh, okay, that's unlocked now, and they can heal. Not that it's gone, but it's unlocked so they can start doing the work, and it's no longer dormant in their system, in their operating system, or just in any part of their body. We hold on to things. So we're like this as humans when there's a fight or flight, right? We hold on to just whatever we can, not realizing it's actually causing disease and illness in the body because we're clenching so tightly internally that it causes, there's a whole other conversation about that, but deep dive into what it does.
Could you just something you said, guilt?
Yeah.
Because anger is a little bit easier to get rid of. Hurt and feeling really wounded is much easier to release because you can cry it out. Anger, you can go to the gym, you can punch it out, you do all sorts of things. What do you do with people for guilt?
MER.
Okay.
Mental and emotional release. We go and we kind of unhook that, because usually if there's guilt, it's a little bit of self-sabotage because they know they did that. They know that they could have done better. And so they're like, oh, if I could just do this, or if I could just say this, or, oh, let me send one more text message. And it comes from a place of guilt. It comes from a place of, I'm not good enough.
Okay.
So that's the real wound. And that sometimes takes a couple sessions to get to, because I won't ever say they have to come to that realization. I might hold the mirror here for you, Agnes, or here, but I'm not going to, even though I am a psychologist as well, I don't CBT, and no judgment to any of your users who are cognitive behavioral therapists. I am as well. And I use probably that as more of a 10th or 11th modality versus the first 8 or 9 that are more emotional releases, because I found that most people who come to me know what their problem is. I can't tell you how many patients have come in and been like, so I'm a love addict, or I'm a sex addict, or I don't know what's wrong with me, but I know that I keep attracting the same type of men. So they even will know minimal, that much.
Okay.
And to tell them, or to tell you, if you came in and you said that, why to tell you your problems only reinforces that that's a problem. And I don't have a desire to do that. That's a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's why people stay in therapy, is they think, oh, well, I'm going to continue to go because but there's no transformation that's taking place by the therapist telling you the problem, and then you already knowing the problem. I don't think there's a breakthrough. There's actually just some kind of camaraderie of victim mentality that keeps looping with the patient and the client. And I talk to a lot of my colleagues in this industry, and I'm like, let's bring in more modalities. I'm in a couple of weeks, I'm actually going to get licensed to train other therapists to do different modalities. So they can actually be empowered as well to set people free. That's the goal. It's to set people free of themselves so that they can actually live a full life, happy, whole, full of love and giving love. I always tell people, heal people, just like hurt people. So let's be more healed. Everyone says hurt people. And I was like, and healed people heal people too. So there's both, let's not just hold on to the one, let's hold on to both. We're going to do that. Let's identify both, even in our unconscious. So that's in our scope of practice or wheelhouse of surroundings, not just identifying that state of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's a lot of good information, especially for people that are they've got a lot of anxiety because there's an on and off situation in a relationship, or they've been left for a third party, because that's a big one, as you and I know. And also just feeling the basic, as you move through the world, I'm not good enough vibe that you've been carrying for a long time, and you don't even know necessarily why you feel that. Some people just don't know where it came from. Oh, mom and dad were loving and they were still together. I don't know why I don't feel good enough. And it's like, it could have come from school, it could have come from cousins, it could have come from being a teenager and being in some sports thing, and your coach was a real so-and-so. So there's so many levels to where we get stuff from. And it's almost like from 0 to 18, you collect it all. And then from 18 till the day you die, you're offloading it.
Yeah. And I ask so many clients, because they're like, oh, parents are still married. But I've rarely seen really good marriages, And so I recently asked someone he had said to me, no, yeah, this part of my family, all the people are still married. I think we had this conversation. And I said, yeah, but they're healthy relationships. Still married because of cultural reasons or not wanting to leave doesn't mean a good relationship. It means sometimes actually the opposite of that. It means that you just are so dysfunctional, you don't know how to leave. And there's a codependency that's been created. So you can't leave, because you're in your trauma bond and you're continuing the cycle. But the truth is I think so few of us have actually seen healthy relationships and know how to identify healthy communication, healthy individuality. 2 wholes make one, not 2 halves make one. And so really identifying, well, what's a healthy relationship, and breaking that down, and then seeing, oh, okay. Because I think we don't really know, especially as Americans, I think there's very few people who have actually had a really healthy mom and dad, really who do the work, who are emotionally available, who are present, who are open, and who are gentle enough to take the time and just have those deep dives with their kids.
Yeah.
And no judgment, I think it's a
good self-love to begin with within the marriage.
Yes.
Well, excellent. It's going to be a really good resource for people, and they'll be able to contact you. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you think, oh, I really want to mention that? Or you think we've covered?
I think explaining hypnotherapy would probably be good, because people have a fear around it, and there's all these, and just to give clarity for your audience, so that if they want me, or if they want someone who's local, or whatever the case is, there's just clarity on what it can be. And hypnotherapy, in the mind, the unconscious mind is the size of a watermelon, and the conscious mind is the size of a lemon. And so consciously, let's say you came in to quit smoking. Consciously, you don't want to smoke anymore because it's not good for you, right? And so your lemon, your conscious mind, is telling me all these things. But your unconscious, which is the age of 5 to 7 at max, is like, but I'm going to smoke because I want to smoke. And I want to smoke, and I want to smoke. So people are like, I want to quit. And then so I recently said to a patient, when she's like, I can't let go. And I told her, I said, let me pull a cigarette out. She pulled a cigarette out. And I said, just so you know, that cigarette in your hand is dead. It's dead. You choose to give it life. You choose to light it, and you choose to give it power. So what hypnotherapy does is it removes, the critical factory in the brain. So between the conscious and the unconscious mind, there's a critical factory. In hypnosis, when done right, it removes that critical factory. So the suggestions of, I'm happier and healthier when I don't smoke, just as smoking as an example. I'm happier and healthier when I'm in a whole relationship. It actually, and then we can put the critical factory back, and the client can't change that, right? So that's why the results are so permanent with hypnosis, because the unconscious is no longer telling the story. And so with continuous hypnotherapy, the new version of self actually transforms and comes forward. And there's stage shows. Most people don't realize on live sounds, everyone on stage was hypnotized. In order to actually hypnotize somebody, it's a do with process. So you'll see, if you look at a stage show, and people can go on Google and see, the person or the hypnotherapist who's on stage will say, who wants to be hypnotized? And we look, and if I was doing a stage show, which I don't, but if I was, they're going to raise their hand and say, I want, so we would only call on the people who raise their hand. So that's one answer of yes, right? For the unconscious. The second one is who's ever been hypnotized before. And everyone who raises their hands, you'll realize that's who they call on stage. That's a second yes. And the third question is usually on stage. They're different, but it'll be something else. He'll get a third yes, meaning the unconscious has already built rapport with the hypnotherapist. So you're already in a place of people. That's why it scares people, but they don't realize the moment we ask, it's hypnotic conversation. We're getting permission from that inner child. And we can't make you do anything you don't want to do. You said yes 3 times. So there was already a yes in that, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but a permissive act that allows your unconscious to change or allows your unconscious to go under and then bark like a dog or whatever those things are. So, but on an emotional level, that's why it's so powerful, is you are now removing that critical factory and any of the trauma or any things you can actually go deep dive and stop the patterns of over texting, over loving, over giving, because we give them to self and we stop the pattern or the obsessing. There's a lot of obsessing that will take place. And so stopping the loop and bringing it all back to self. So I think hypnotherapy has a really negative connotation, friends and family members of mine were very scared of it until they understood and came in or would see me and said, wow, that I didn't was like that. I thought it was going to be, I thought you were going to control my mind. And I was like, no, this is a do with process. I can't do any of that, nor would I want to do any of that. It's just an aid. It's medicinal. Yes. It's helping you. I always say we are the medicine.
Yeah.
We're either medicine for people or we're a drug for people. How much work is telling of which you're going to be.
It's funny you use that as an example, because when I was really small, probably 6, my mum, my mum's only 18 years older than me. So, she was in her early 20s, and she said she was walking up to the apartment with a basket of washing on her hip and she was grabbing me as well. And she got to the top and she was so puffed. She said, I have to quit smoking. And she went to hypnotherapy. She had 3 sessions and she's never smoked since. So when I heard that, I remember thinking, wow, hypnotherapy is amazing. If you need to get rid of something, like my mom's not really, she's really, she's meat and potatoes, no BS, really kind of. And so I was thinking, she went to hypnotherapy. It was like, I don't remember that when I was little, but she told me this when I was older. And I remember thinking, that's fantastic. It's like, why wouldn't you want to stop smoking? That seems like a great thing to use it for. It's fantastic. And she's never smoked to this day. Yeah,
I thank God. But for smoking, I have 100% success rate, because I'm so careful. We were taught, my mentor and one of my license, the person who licensed me, Dr. Matt, he is so particular with what the patients we can take on because they have tasks before. So I just recently had to turn a client down because they said they wanted to quit smoking, but they weren't willing to do the things to quit smoking, just a task every day of what it looks like to actually do some work. And so I said, that's okay. There's no problem. Let's come back when you're ready. You'll be ready eventually. We all get sick and tired eventually. It's no one's, whenever that case is for you. And there's no judgment, there's no shame, and there's no guilt that comes with that you aren't ready. But your mom was ready to quit. She got to I'm sick and tired, which was her moment, right? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's usually when clients find me for smoking or for emotional trauma or looping, and then when they find out it's themselves, it's very telling, but it's also very empowering because they no longer push that on the other person. They say, oh, wow, the only person to change is self. And once I change and I do this work and heal this, because you're attracted to different things and you give out a different attraction to other people and life, right? Because you really don't want the same things. So you're not even the same mirror for other people. So in relationships and friendships, everything changes when you change. Everything. Everything. And everyone around you actually get a different version of them. And that's why I think Neville's work and everything is so powerful. But he was doing therapy before he called it therapy. I don't think he realizes, but I could break down all of his modalities or a couple of the great, Louise Hayes, all the great people that we've worked with and see that, they were all doing different types of cognitive therapy and different modalities. And I've looked at all of them and it's like, gosh, oh, this is this modality, or this is this modality. And oh, wow, I didn't even realize they're using this. Lessons in trauma and lessons of releasing stored emotions, trapped emotions.
Yeah.
So yeah, really powerful.
Oh, such good stuff. And I think too, it's like if there's one thing that you don't really vibe with, there's so many other things in the toolbox that people can use, and different modalities are going to work differently with different people. So you just find the one or two things that work extremely well with that particular addiction or that particular personality type. Do you get a sense of like when you get to know someone after a couple of sessions, do you go, okay, now I've got a sense of them, I think these two modalities would work better? Like, is that how it unfolds?
Yeah, I, like you, will humbly say I have a very strong intuition, and I've done this for a long time, 15 years now. So when you've done it for as long as I have, you kind of know, I know within 5 minutes of their personal detailed history, usually what the greater underlying problem is. I also have a lot of training to identify quickly the language patterns that people use, whether there's codependence, trauma, pain, I'm not good enough, emotional instability, personality disorder. There's all kinds of things that will come in the office. And I stay stoic, because it's not, I want to see, and they usually will say, and then I'll suggest, here's what I would do. And it's up to them. They will come in for hypno, but I think breath work might be deeper. I do a psychedelic type of breath work that actually activates stored emotions. Sometimes I like to do that before in inner child healing, because there's blocked emotions that will actually allow your next session of hypno to be a lot stronger. And so it really just depends on what the patient is looking for, or the client's looking for. But it's the wheelhouse of having different tools for me as I fell in love with healing and fell in love with the journey and getting different licenses and certificates along the way. Yeah, I pull from so many different ones, top being the ones we've discussed, EMDR, hypnotherapy, mental and emotional relief, tapping is really, really good for self-soothing. And people can do that by themselves. There's a lot on YouTube. I'll have to send you a couple that people can actually administer tapping, as they're doing their own meditations, to start to release some of their own trapped emotions, and to soothe. Somatic therapy and healing, and go in and seeing what was around, even when they're born, what it was like in the universe at that point. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming and sharing all that.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. Anything, if they need questions or anything, I'll send, I'll create an email just so I have it for you and for this channel. That way I know it's for your users and your viewers. And then if they ever want to book with me, I'll send my assistant's email over, but at least then I know this is for this particular thing. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's always so good to talk to you. You good. Too. I just love it. It's just so it's inspiring.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, and thank you for all that you do, because you are healing people every single day, as loving people back to life. And it's just such a gift. You're such a gift to me and to so many. So thank you for having me. Lots of love always.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Dr. Brooke, I'm so used to calling you by your first name.
I know. And you can, and they can too. It's just you wanted the professional names.
Yes.
Like, okay. But yes.
Brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope that you got lots out of the discussion. Anything that you want to ask, there will be links down below so you can contact Dr. Brooke, where she is, and then you can see if you want to have a session online, or if you're lucky enough to live near her, then you can go there in person. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, bye.
Bye. Hang on. Don't hang up. We'll say bye in private. Okay. Bye, everybody.